And welcome to another video. In today's video I'm going to show you how we're going to turn this $0 free Borderlands mask, which you got from pre-ordering Borderlands 3 when it came out like 2 years ago, maybe longer, I don't know, into a $250 prop. Alright, so to start it off I used some, I think it was a 180 grit sandpaper, and I just roughed off the surface for better adhesion. Then I used some masking tape to close and cover all of the holes that the mask has, because when I'm applying the resin from the inside I don't want it to drip out all over the mask. Just ripping off pieces of masking tape and closing all of the holes. Then I took some fiberglass glove. Then I was taking a look at the mask and like kind of getting a rough idea of how I want to lay down the fiberglass to see how I'm going to cut them. And then I was just cutting the fiberglass into the pieces that I want to lay down later. So now I'm going to put on some disposable gloves. To reinforce the mask I'm going to use the Smooth On Epoxy Grey, which is a brush on resin. As you've seen in my other videos, I use the Onyx resin a lot, or also the 65D, which are both very liquid, and they're very good for slush casting because they're picking up all of the details. But since this mask is not in a mold, the resin would flow over the edge, or I had to build and create some kind of edge that the resin would not flow out of the mask. But yeah, it's just a lot easier to use the Smooth On Epoxy Grey, because you can just like brush it in the mask. It's not going to run out of the mask. So as always, giving the material a good stirring, take your time, mix it thoroughly. Once the material is all mixed, just use a brush. Don't use very expensive ones because you're gonna have to throw the brush away after it. So I'll always use the cheaper ones. They sometimes lose a few hair. You can either like leave the hair just in the resin, or you can remove them. Since I had another mask, another casting at hand, which I wanted to reinforce, giving the shape of it. So I did like 2 or 3 slush casting layers, and at some points, due to the shape, it's a bit harder to get the material so I feel like I just brush on a little extra material, and you can just save like cups and brushes and stuff if you know or plan out that you're gonna do stuff like that. I waited for the epoxy gray a little bit to kick in, and then I applied my fiberglass. Then I realized that I need a little bit more fiberglass, so I just cut out a few extra pieces. And once the fiberglass was in the mold, I then added another coat of epoxy gray on top of the fiberglass, pushing the fiberglass into the epoxy gray and the epoxy gray on top of it into the fiberglass as well, really making sure that all of the fiberglass is covered in resin. Once the resin was dried, the mask was rigid and sturdy, just as I wanted it to be, not like the original soft and floppy plastic. Then removing the masking tape, you can see all the holes are closed now. Then comes the typical cleaning, cutting out the eyes and the sanding. And since it's the same process over and over, I just used some old footage from making the Dragon Priest mask. So yeah, it's basically the same process but with a different mask. And I did that so I don't have to move the camera equipment, and also to save some storage space on my hard drive. So once everything was done, to start the repaint, I was looking at a base color of the mask. So for the base color, I was mixing white with beige. And then just covering most of the mask. As you can see, the first layer is just barely covering it, so I was applying the first layer and then I left the mask to let the first layer dry. So once the first layer was dried, I mixed up another batch of white and beige and then applied my second layer. And once the second layer was applied, again I left the mask for the layer to dry, and then it was time for the third layer. If you have like a right color as a spray can, you probably could have done that in one session, but since I was using acrylic paints here, multiple layers within dry time was the way for me to go. And I still wasn't happy with the base color, so I then added a fourth layer of base coat or base coloring. So once the fourth layer was dry and I was happy with the overall color of the mask, I then started with coloring. As you can see, I'm putting a bit of like different colors on a piece of cardboard. It's a dab of green, like brown, beige, red, like different colors to mix and play around, and then just started to repaint all of the dirt areas on the mask. Once this layer was dried, I then mixed up a bit of orange, red, white, different colors to play around mixing for the wall symbol. One very important thing I want to point out is that you don't get discouraged during the painting process. I've learned this when I was painting my first Borderlands mask years ago. While I was painting and started painting, I was like, oh my god, this looks so bad. As you can see right now, just look at the mask at this point of the video. It really looks not impressive. You might even say it looks bad at this point. But spoiler ahead, look at it at the end of the video. It will look completely different. If you're going along painting and you think like, oh, it looks like shit, don't get discouraged, just keep going. It most likely will turn out very good in the end. Also here for the wall symbol, I let the first layer dry and then came back and put on the second layer. Then I just got some black acrylic and started to fill out the eyes, and also painting all of the metal parts black. Now I started with the part of the cell shading process, adding some of the black lines. And here I made a little mistake. I drew the line over the orange wall symbol, which I later noticed that the black line doesn't cross the wall symbol. I then had to cover it in orange again later. It wouldn't be necessary because it still looks good this way, but I wanted to have this mask like on point with the reference image. So yeah, but the good thing or the cool thing about Borderlands is either if it's the cell shading or the colors you choose, since there are so many different and cool skins in Borderlands in the game itself. You have so much color and template and patterns, themes and ideas that you can apply to your Borderlands mask or your Borderlands cosplay, to your clothing and stuff. Like for example my Tiny Tina themed Creek mask that I did, or my Christmas mask with a claptrap snow globe. I'll have that video linked in the end of the video, so definitely check out my Borderlands collection and see some of the creative ideas which I applied to my Borderlands masks and crafts. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can just whatever color mix, or like carbon fiber with the TDO style, or adding wood like Jacobs and stuff. You can just do whatever you want. Once that was done, I then took some grey and silver and starting to buff up the black eyes and also the metal parts to give them this metallic look. And then I continued the cell shading, but not with the acrylic, but with a Sharpie. Using a Sharpie or a marker on the acrylic, it works very good. I'm using this marker for the thicker lines, but I'm also going to use a Sharpie for the smaller and more detailed lines. Also, you can mix up the thickness of your lines. Earlier in the video I mentioned that don't get discouraged during the process, because now you can see that adding all of these lines and doing the cell shading, this is where the mask really starting to look good. So like if you're starting to paint your mask and you're like, it's not that good or stuff like that, just keep going. And like I said, in most cases adding the cell shading at the end, this is where the Borderlands magic happens. The painting process in this video is some of the clips that I recorded. I've been playing here in like a 300% speed, others are played in like an 800% speed. At the end of the video I will also have linked a video of just the painting process in a time-lapse. I don't know, can you call it a time-lapse when it's like just 200% speed, so double the speed? And please leave a comment. What do you think of the speed of this video? And if you've seen the other video, go check it out. And let me know what you think of the speed in the other video, in the just painting video. What do you think is a good time-lapse speed? More like something like in this video where I'm going, depending on the length of the clip, like 300 to 800 or a 200%. Let me know what do you think is a good speed to follow up, because I'm sure like the 800% speed in the video here in some clips, that is pretty sure that that's way too fast if you were like wanted to follow up or learn and see a bit where and how to do the cell shading. But I wasn't sure if the 200% might be a little bit too slow. But on the other hand, since YouTube has the option to play a video slower or faster, I was like, okay, if 200 is too fast because people really want to go step by step, they can still turn it down to the normal pace or even below that with the YouTube option. And the 200, I think YouTube allows to go to double, so it would be like 400, which would then be kind of fast. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Then I cut out some pieces of black urethane rubber, cut out some small plexiglass pieces, used some sandpaper on both sides to give it this illuminating effect. And that's it. The eyes that I prepared at the end, I just did a like really rough and quick fix and throw them into the mask, because I'm not planning on wearing it or anything, so it's just for decoration, and the ice that I prepared was just for taking some pictures and stuff, so it doesn't have to be that precise, or it has to be like using a 2-compound resin glue, which I usually use because I'm always a bit anxious about things falling apart, and but for this I just did a quick and dirty job getting them in. Also, I did not add any like leather straps and stuff to the mask, because like I said, I'm not planning to wear it. It's just for decoration for my collection. I will link 2 videos at the end of this video. The first video is the one where I show you my Borderlands collection, where you can see all the other Borderlands masks that I've done so far and see how I usually add leather and leather straps to them. And the second video is a uncut version of the paint job, painting the Borderlands mask after repainting. As always, if you enjoyed the video, smash that like button. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.